have been doing this for years. I've built 5 race cars. This obviously has been the biggest repair job, just to give you guys tips if you want to do this sort of stuff yourself. I've got a race car build coming up that I want to race. Don't tell my wife I said that. Biggest thing I'm worried about on this car is... Right, so valve lapping. So we take the valve, and then what we want to do is start off with some coarse. Just put a little bit of coarse around, pop the valve in, put a little bit of spit on your dolly stick, and then just rotate it backwards and forwards like that. The trick here is getting a decent... Can you already see the difference between this valve seat that's really black and pitted and horrible, and this one that's now got a lovely grey line round it? And if you look at the valve, you'll also see that we're starting to get a nice grey line around the valve, and that's what we're looking for. Just wipe that from in the seat. When you've done this, you need to really wash the head, because you don't want any of this grinding paste getting in the head. Put a bit more paste. You leave the valve stem seals out when you're doing this. Now we'll go to the other end and do a little bit of fine. I have to say, these seats are actually not too bad. None of them are pitted. I mean, they're all black, but then it's a diesel. Right, so we've done 2 lots of coarse. Just wipe that off. Clean up the seat. Now what we're looking for is that lovely uniform grey line all the way around the valve, which gives an indication that you've got a really good seal between the valve and the seat. It's a nice grey colour. Now, to check that we've got a good seal, so what I'm going to do is smear some Engineer's blue around the valve. I want it all the way around the valve, so the whole thing is coated. And then I'm going to put the valve in. Press test was not bad. What you're looking for with the press test is that where the valve meets the seat, there's no Engineer's blue left, and as you can see, all the way around there's none at all, which tells you that you've got a really good seat between the valve and the seat in the head, because it's pushed all of the Engineer's blue out. So the press test looked really good. So now what I'll do is do a twist test. So with the twist test, we just press it down, twist it, pull it out, but all the way around that seat is a nice grey line. There's no Engineer's blue at all, and on the valve, that's got a beautiful seat look. So it's pushed all of the Engineer's blue out, which is what you're looking for, and you've just got that lovely grey line all the way around. Now, if there was a high spot or a low spot on that valve seat, like if it wasn't seating perfectly, what would happen is where the high spot or the low spot is, you'd have a little bit of Engineer's blue would be in that space, and then you'd have to go back and do it a bit more with either the coarse. If it's like a deep pit, you'd have to keep going with the coarse and then do the fine after. But I'm lucky with this head, because looking at these seats, they all look in really good condition. They're all really smooth and not pitted. So it should be pretty straightforward for all of these valves for me to do just what I just did then. So probably about 10 minutes for each one, maybe 15, because I like to clean up, and even though this one's perfect, I try and seek perfection. I'm a bit like a Borg when it comes to mechanics. But anyway, that one's looking good. You know, the choice is now to go, yep, I'm happy with that one. So now what I do is give the valve a really good clean, make sure we've got all the grinding paste out of that, and number it. And then you move on to the next one. So then you do the same process all over again. So back to the coarse side. Put that one in. Two more to do. I've finished the head, all nicely labelled, all done nicely. I did the inlet side. I didn't film doing the inlet side. It takes about half the time to do the inlet side as the exhaust side. The seats are a lot cleaner. So she's all done. And this is a really nice phase for me because we're moving out of repair phase and back into reassembly, which I always enjoy. This has like been the biggest job by far. So next thing, yes, checking the head straight as the head's off. So just put your straight edge across. I don't know if you can see that, but there's absolutely, the sun is beautiful today. Absolutely no daylight there whatsoever. Just do it on the diagonal. Absolutely perfect. So that saves me a job. I don't have to get the head skimmed. Now, why would you get the head skimmed? You'd get the head skimmed if it was warped, obviously, which we've just checked with the straight edge and it's not. But you might also want to get the head skimmed if you've got pitting around here between the cylinders, or pitting on the water channels, these water channels, not these are the bolts, these water channels here, this one, this one, this one, this one. So yeah, I mean, they're the two main, or if just really the surface is really bad, this one is really smooth. I've cleaned this all off with a scraper. Talking about scrapers, in every single manual, it tells you to use a wooden scraper. Yeah, go for it. You'll be there 6 months trying to clean one of these with a wooden scraper. I always use a really nice metal scraper, but I'm really, really careful when using a metal scraper and really keeping it nice and flat and on a very shallow angle as opposed to a steep angle like that. If you use a steep angle, then yes, you can start putting cuts in the head. Let's move over to this sunny bit. Yeah, if you use a steep angle like this, don't. Use a really nice shallow angle, and you can see you can just gently scrape off excess gasket, just nicely like that. It's all about care and attention, so go for it if you want with a wooden scraper. I never do myself. I cleaned this all up with this metal scraper. It's come up really nice, and she is ready now to be reassembled. So when I mean reassembled, talking about putting all the valve springs back on and the collets. So I'm going to set up and do that now, show you how to do that, because as soon as I've reassembled the head, I'm finished with repairs and we're moving back on to refitting the cylinder head and starting to put the whole thing back together. Obviously I've still got to take the gearbox off and do the timing chains. I don't really call that a repair job. That's like, I mean, it is a repair job. It's a maintenance job. So yeah, somebody mentioned to me the other day about the pistons. I've discussed the pistons. Yes, of course it's a risk. Of course it is. I'm reusing pistons that have hit the valves. However, in my experience of building and running race engines and blowing up more engines on the racetrack than I can count, not once have I ever had an issue reusing a piston that has hit a valve like that. Yes, of course, I'm not going to reuse a piston on an angled valve head where, you know, the valve has put a big hole in the piston or mashed itself in the top and you've got a big hole or dint in the top of the piston. Or maybe as well, if you've got thin pistons where the top ring is really close to the top of the piston, what can happen, the valve can hit there and then you can get a compression crack down there, or it can compress the aluminium and nip up on the top ring. That doesn't happen typically on these types of engines. Diesels have really thick, chunky pistons, and there's a lot of room between the top of the piston and the first top ring. And I don't think I've ever seen a compression crack or compression fracture, and I've certainly never seen a top ring nipped up from valves hitting the piston like that. So I am reusing them. I'm also reusing them because to not reuse them means I've got to drop the sump off. I've got to drop the sump off anyway, but that's by the by. You've got to drop the sump off, you've got to take all the big end bearing caps off, got to take all the pistons out, replace all the pistons, get new rings, but then you've got to hone the block. So, now we've got to take the block out, strip the block down, send it off to my mate's remanufacturing shop, get it re-honed, pull it back here, reassemble it. I mean, it's hours and hours and hours of additional work that in 99 times out of 100 with a piston that looks like that is totally unnecessary, because there's nothing wrong with those pistons. So yeah, there's a risk there. Life's a risk. You know, you pay your money, you takes your choice. The actual biggest thing I'm worried about on this car is the exhaust camshaft, because the cams on these are hollow to save weight and improve fuel efficiency, and the lobes on the cams are pressed onto hollow shafts. So what can happen in 9 out of 10 of those, with the piston hitting the valve and the valve being stopped from moving by the cam and busting the rocker, you can sometimes move the lobe on the shaft because it's not a solid camshaft. If it was a solid camshaft, I wouldn't be bothered. I've looked at these cams and it doesn't look like that has happened. They look fine. All the lobes look like they're in the place that they should be. The only way to really check it is to reassemble it and run it up, and if it runs rough, then I know I've got to change the exhaust cam, and if it runs fine, then I know it's that 9 times the 9 times out of 10 where it's perfectly fine and happy days. So that's the route that I'm going to go. But yeah, in the back of my mind, that is actually the main thing that I'm worried about with all the repairs and the reassembly. So I'm going to set up, and then I'm going to show you how I reassemble the head, and then we'll crack on and get the head back on the car, get it torqued down, and then I can put that engine bracket back on that side, take the gearbox off and do the timing chains, reassemble it all, and then we're finished. So this is the official workshop manual for taking the head off, and you can see it's remove those pipes and remove that and take that plug off, take the turbo oil feed off and the heat shields. Easier said than done from the bottom. Remove that, take some more turbo pipes off, take the oil drain tube out of the turbo. Yeah, you can't do that. You can only do that as you lift the turbo off, and the reason for that is because this pipe is solid steel and it pushes into the bottom of the turbo, so that diagram there is utter nonsense. Take the DPF off, which I did. Tells you to cut the clamp off there. I'm not sure why. I didn't on mine. I left the clamp on it. Don't know why they're saying to cut the clamp off. Take the turbo bolts off the bottom. No mention in this manual of how to get the bottom heat shields off, which I struggled with for about half an hour. Remove the EGR, and off comes the turbo, and then you move on to the cylinder head, and this is the one where if we go through this, remove the glow plugs. I actually removed those on the bench, got them all out. Remove the oil filter, remove that little module, remove all the rockers, remove those bolts, remove the main head bolts, and lift the head off. Yeah, no you can't. And I struggled with this for a little bit. Didn't start banging it, but it wouldn't lift off, and the reason it won't lift off is because of these two big massive bolts in the end here, which bolt onto this main bracket here, There's 2 bolts that go through there, and no mention in this manual about those 2 bolts are holding the head on. So even when you've got a workshop manual, sometimes it doesn't tell you the whole process, and you have to do the old favourite mechanic's stare, which I did with that, because I knew it was being held by something. I was like, right, okay, the manual ain't telling me. Let me have a good stare at this and figure out what's holding it. And I figured out that it was that engine bracket on the end there. Found where the bolts are, which are a bitch to get to because the bulkhead's in the way. But I lowered the engine down a little bit on that side and then got to them. Took those 2 bolts off, a head came straight off. Lovely. Would be nice if they put that in the manual, but there you go. So, moral of the story is don't always rely on the manual, because even the manual might not be right and you still might end up doing the mechanic's stare and trying to figure it out for yourself. So anyway, there we go. I'm really pleased that the head don't need skimming. That's 2-3 days at the machine shop less that I need to worry about, and the cost. So I'll get set up now and show you how I reassemble the head, and then we're in reassemble the car. So next thing to do is reassemble the head, which also takes ages, but I'm going to try and do it as quick as I can. I've washed the head twice, cleaned all the ports out, everything. So get the head reassembled, get the head on, start reassembling all of these parts onto the engine. More importantly, get that engine bracket back on that side, because then I can drop the engine bracket off the other side, get the gearbox off and do the chains, and yeah, start putting the thing back together. This obviously has been the biggest repair job, changing the valves, lapping all the valves in, changing the rockers and lifters that were broken, checking the other rockers and lifters. So let's crack on with reassembling the head, see how long that takes me to do 16 valves. I need to take more care. I'll show you where that is, where it landed. There it is, look. So it flicked from over there into there. Yes. Could have lost it. So let's start again, shall we? Instead of pressing down so much, I'm just going to press down a little bit and then take over with turning it, I think is the safer option. I've had my warning. If I do that again, it will fly to the other end of the garage and I'll never find it, and I'll be off to Land Rover to pay 360 quid for a new collet. You never know with Land Rover, it might be a quid, it might be 360. It's a bit of a lottery with their pricing. But yes, that's a perfect example of how you can lose little bits when you're doing this job. And it's nice if you've magnetised your screwdriver. There we go. I'm not sure how long this is taking me per valve. Certainly less than 5 minutes, I would think. So not too bad. The thing is with this channel, I was motivated to do this channel by watching other salvage channels. Matt Armstrong, God, who doesn't love Matt Armstrong and his content? I've been watching his stuff for years. Saving Salvage, another one of my favourites. The thing is, I have been doing this for years, so as you go along, as everybody does when they start out. Yeah, so what was I saying? Motivated by other people's content, but yeah, I have been doing this for years. I've built 5 race cars. I've done loads of salvage rebuilds. The problem is I was a bit old school, and 2 of the race car rebuilds I fully documented on old school forums, and you know, I wasn't really into YouTube then, apart from watching it, and apart from the feeling of, oh my God, I can't do YouTube, I don't want to get in front of a camera because I look shit and I sound shit, and all the other fears that go through your mind when it comes to putting yourself in front of a camera. What I wanted to do with this channel, rather than getting a car in and rebuilding it and then showing the finished article, I wanted to, on occasion, go a little bit deeper and show individual process, like this process, for example. You know, how to do a head, rebuild a head, you know, just to give you guys tips if you want to do this sort of stuff yourself and you want to venture a little bit deeper into repairs and mechanics. But anyway, I love mechanics and fixing things. I mean, it was wildly different to my main career is in software testing. You know, and I've got a few internet businesses, a digital marketing agency, but it doesn't give me the same satisfaction as doing this, particularly race car builds. I love building race cars. There's no better feeling in a man's life than buying track car or race car parts. But don't tell my wife I said that. But you will understand, won't you? So I've got a race car build coming up. It will be Salvage that I want to race. And then I'll show you the whole process of strip and fit out and turn into race car. I'll win some races in it, show you test days and how we go about it in detail, because I'm quite sure that, you know, loads of you guys like me are really into track days and track cars and all that sort of stuff. So I wanted to cross over with this channel, you know, not just do pure salvage rebuilds, but sort of cross over into track stuff and then racing track stuff. Because again, I've done that for years. I've been in Clubman Motorsport since 2011. I first built my Clio 182. Okay, so I'm nearly finished. Got one left to do, so they're all done apart from this last one. Put the spring on. We are done. Look at that. All 16 done. Nice. So this head is ready to go back on the car. I've just got to screw in the bung on this end and temperature sensor, and we're ready to put her back on the car. So one quick thing, I've got the new head gasket on. Can you see these 3 holes? They line up with the 3 holes on the old head gasket. It's important on these that you get that right, because all the head gaskets are different thicknesses, so you have to buy the head gasket according to how many holes are on your head gasket, which I think can be 2 holes up to 5. I'd have to check that. Anyway, mine's got 3, so I've bought a nice Victor Reinz 3-hole head gasket. We're all ready to drop the head back on. I've fitted the heat shields as well around the exhaust manifold, because again, that's much easier to do with it on the bench than it is when it's on the car. I was going to fit the turbo, but I haven't got an engine crane here. I would have done that. I'd have fitted the turbo and all the heat shields around the turbo as well. But then I thought, tricky to do that, because I've got to lower the turbo onto the turbo drain tube, because it's a strange design where it sort of pushes in and then you have to bolt it on. But anyway, I've decided to fit the turbo on after I've lowered the head on. So I'm going to put the head on now, and then I'll show you the torquing up procedure, because there's, I think, 3 or 4 stages of torquing one of these up. And then after that, it's putting the turbo on and the turbo heat shields, which the top one is going to be a real bitch because it was to get off. So to get it back on is going to be a nightmare, but hopefully not. So see you soon.